Welcome back to Make Do Suburban Fireman Podcast, episode 33. I'm your host, Nick Peppard. Sean is unfortunately not able to be with us tonight due to a family emergency, but we are honored tonight to have my buddy, RJ, Robert James, Capital Fire, up in the DC metro area. RJ, welcome to the show, bro.
What's going on, bro? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to finally get to do this episode. I've been looking forward to it all year since we put it on the calendar.
It's really good.
Yeah, definitely. Always good to chat with you, man. So that being said, let's kind of dive into kind of where you started in the fire service, your journey to where you're at now, and kind of just fill in the gaps a little bit for those that maybe don't know you or not super familiar with Capital Fire. If you could just kind of give us a little background on yourself and on the company, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is RJ. I'm a career fireman in Frederick, Maryland. I started as a volunteer firefighter when I was 14 years old with the Cromwell Fire Department in Cromwell, Connecticut. I moved down to Maryland at 18 to do the college living program with the Rockville Volunteer Fire Department. I lived in the firehouse, one of the busiest fire stations in Montgomery County, and alongside one of the busiest firehouses on the East Coast as a volunteer. I did that for a couple years before I got hired on the job in Frederick. I worked in the city of Frederick, which is the downtown portion of Frederick County, which is like the urban area, which is very, very busy. Worked in the city pretty much my entire career up until I got promoted in 2021 to lieutenant. And now I am a float lieutenant in the 2nd Battalion out of the Special Operations Command. So I have been in Special Operations for a little bit of time now. And I am an instructor with Capital Fire Training. I traveled the country teaching with 15 other guys from the East Coast, ranging all the way from Connecticut all the way down to Virginia. And with stops in between. So we have a wide range of guys in the group who all bring a lot to the table. We do a lot of things: engine ops, truck ops. We do leadership development. Command is one of our big programs that we do. And then we have a RIP program, which we just returned from MAFC, doing that program, as well as our Forcible entry program, which is one of our bigger programs that we do quite a bit, which we'll actually be doing next week in the at the University of Missouri for the summer fire school. So it's me.
Yeah, I like it, man. So yeah, started up in Connecticut. Like a lot of us, starting as the volunteer side of the house, moving into you brought up the living program. I want to touch there for just a second. So can you describe for people that don't know what a live-in program is? Because that is a very it's not something that's done everywhere, right? It's kind of one of those things that certain departments or parts of the country seem to do it more than others. But yeah, what is the live-in program, and describe that for people listening that are like, what the hell?
We gotta be careful with that, man. We could be here all night talking about that. I mean, essentially, look, let's get down to the nitty-gritties, right? It's a program where you can live in the firehouse, gain experience, and everybody wins, right? The volunteer corporation gets people who are there devoted to riding, learning, training, right? And they get the rigs on the street. In return, they provide you with a place to stay, right? So in Maryland, it's a huge, huge program because a lot of the universities and colleges here offer top-notch fire science programs. University of Maryland, Montgomery College. Like, there's so many different colleges here in Maryland where you can go to school for fire science. Now, in Montgomery County, Maryland, where I live at and volunteered at, Montgomery College is a community college, so you don't live there, but they have a very, very top-notch fire science program. So in turn, mostly everybody who volunteers, or most everybody who goes to the college that does fire science, they live in a firehouse that's around there. When I lived in the firehouse, fortunately, I had probably like 8, 9 other guys that lived in the firehouse, and everybody went to school for different things. You don't have to go to school for fire science, but mostly everybody does. But it's just, instead of living in a dorm room, you live in a firehouse bunk room. It's really chill, right? It's real decorated, and it got your signs and your stoplights and everything, all the cool stuff that make a dorm room a dorm room. It's just we have a bunk room. And the cool thing is, when I lived in the firehouse, man, there was, of the entire crew of guys who rode all the time, who lived in the firehouse, staffed the apparatus, there wasn't one of us that was old enough to even go get a beer. So, you can have your driver who's 18, your officer who's 19, or 20. You can have your back step guys who are ranging anywhere from 18 to 21. So it's all young guys who are devoted to the fire service, who go to school and want to just keep running calls. When I joined Rockville ran 11,000 calls a year. And still not the busiest firehouse in Montgomery County. Well, at the time, it was the second busiest firehouse. Now, it's not the busiest firehouse. There's firehouses that run more than Rockville. It's still a busy firehouse. But there's no better, in my eyes, in my opinion, there's no better experience for a young person who is, fresh out of high school, who wants to be a firefighter, to gain experience when you're running calls all day, all night. You're going to fires, you're going to cut jobs, you're running these calls. The shitty part about it is, though, when you have to go to school, right? So, you go to 2 fires a night, and then you got to turn around and be in class the next morning. That's the real struggle. That's how you find out who you really are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man, that's a cool concept. I dig it, because it's like, what better way to find out if you're like made for the shit than to be immersed in it, right?
Yeah.
What better way to teach young firefighters than to have them fully immersed in the environment, from the house duties to running calls to doing all this stuff like day in and day out. Like that,
Sure.
To me, it makes sense. And it's a good opportunity if you're in a combination system, or a lot of guys, may volunteer at this house and work career in this, department or whatever. I mean, that's a pretty common thing where you're at, right? Where guys will have a volunteer company, and then maybe, their career department's next county over, that kind of thing, or vice versa. Maybe they started as a volunteer. It's a big combination system, and they transition into the career side of things. So from a career standpoint, it just makes sense to me too. Like, this is an opportunity to see like who your up and comers are, the guys that are like really, really into it for the right reasons. And it's kind of a way to almost, I don't know, like not handpick, but kind of groom and see who's up and coming and who really wants to be in this line of work, and who's kind of got that foot in the door and is working hard and hustling and getting after it. Like, man, that's what better interview, right? What a better interview process than to be like, hey, we've been running fires with these guys for a year.
Oh yeah, man. And so, like, not to speak for everybody, but I can tell you for Montgomery County, for Rockville on its own, we have very, very high standards, right? So our volunteer system, the standard is we have to do everything that's a career firefighter would have to do in order to do anything like promotion, anything like that. So, and our volunteer system, if you want to promote, you have to take a test. You have to study for it. You have to take a test. You have to pass the test. You have a practical test. In order to drive, in order to drive apparatus, you got to study, you got to take a test. They run you through a rigorous training program, and then you have to test out. We have some people that don't make it in the first shot, but they come back and they nail it out the park, but it's a process. You can't just live in our firehouse. You have to have one of a couple things. You either have to go to school full time, have a full time job, or be in transition of that. So coming out of school, going into the workforce. So the requirement is you have to be at the firehouse for duty nights. So we do a duty night program. So we have a Monday shift, Tuesday shift, Wednesday shift, Thursday shift, right down the line. So you have to, as a living, you have to do 3 additional duty nights to your duty night. So if you're assigned to the Thursday night duty crew, you have to pick 3 other nights that you are going to be at the firehouse to ride in addition to your assigned night. So, it's really cool for a young person because, the other volunteers that come in the firehouse, they're there one night a week, right? So as a live-in school, because you now have to learn how to adjust to personalities, right? Everybody's different. You have to learn how to get along with everybody, right? You're gonna flip when I tell you this. We have over 200 volunteers in my department, right? So active volunteers. Nice. So, it's very, very much, especially in the fire service, where it's a very type A driven job. You know what I mean? You got to deal with personalities. You're talking about young 18-year-old men and women, 19-year-old kids who are going to school for college who have no life skills. Now got to learn how to navigate, 30, 40, 50-year-old men and women because their personalities. You know what I mean? So it's a really, really good learning experience. I'll be honest with you, man. If I didn't have that experience, I don't think I would have rocked my promotional exam like I did. I wrote number 4 on the list. And it's everything that you deal with on a promotional exam, right? People messing up big time, people doing dumb shit, and then tactics for firefighting, right? That's any promotional exam.
Sure.
But that's my volunteer world that we live in. We have people that do dumb shit, and we have people who are really good at firefighting, and we've learned how to be good firefighters just by being there a lot, running calls. So, I mean, if it wasn't for that volunteer experience I got living in the firehouse and being there a lot, running calls, you know, our guys are probably averaging between 1,000 to 1,500 calls a year a person. If I didn't get that experience running those calls, being there, I don't think that would have helped me in my professional career. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's invaluable, man. And like I said, just the opportunity to do that is awesome. To me, I think that more departments should explore that possibility. And what I really loved is, man, you like hitting on the high standards. Like just because they're live-ins or they're volunteers, like doesn't mean that they're not meeting the standard, right? You have set standards for people, regardless of career, volunteer, whatever. This is the standard, and I love that because there's this like perception in some parts of the country where like the standards are different for like career and volunteer as far as performance standards and what they got to do on the fireground and all that stuff. Like the job doesn't change just whether you got a paycheck or not, right? The job is still the same. Like that door don't give a shit whether you're paid or you're volunteer. That door don't, or that fire that you're pushing down the hallway, like it doesn't give a shit what your salary is. Like it doesn't. I mean, let's be honest. Like when it's shitting and getting and your things are going, like they go on the fire ground, like wide open. It doesn't really matter who's paying your bills at that point. Like you showed up on that truck, you took the same oath, you got the same equipment. People expect you to fix their problem, and they don't really care whether there's 2 guys on the truck or 5 guys on the truck, whether you're getting paid or not getting paid. All they know is they have an emergency and they need you to fix it. 100%. And I love the high standard across the board. I love that. To me, that is the way it should be. We shouldn't make excuses for, oh, we're a small city, so we can't do this, or, we're volunteers, so we don't have to train as much or whatever. I disagree. I think like the less staffing you have, the less resources you have, the more you should train. Yeah, because you don't have the people coming behind you like to make up the slack if you are slacking, right? I mean, if you got a big system, yeah, you can throw a lot of numbers and stuff. That's great. And maybe, lackluster performance kind of gets swept under the rug and lost in translation. When you have less people, man, how much more do you have to shine? How much more do you have to like be on top of your game? So those arguments to me are mute. Like when I hear people say that kind of stuff, I just kind of laugh because I'm like, man, the job is the job is the job. Like when you show up, forcible entry is forcible entry, right? Fire attack. I mean, like putting water on the fire, ventilation, search, all these things have to be done. And now we have to, alter or kind of, manipulate our stuff a little bit based on staffing sometimes. Like if I show up with 2 guys on a rig, obviously that's a different setting than showing up with 5 guys on a rig or 4 guys on a rig, right? That does change things a little bit, but the tasks still have to get done. That's the point is stuff still has to be performed.
I'm very jaded to that. I never really knew that was a thing until I started traveling and teaching, because it doesn't happen here in Maryland. Sure. Maryland's a big fire service state. You know what I mean? So everybody in Maryland, it's in the fire service. They're always pushing to be better. A lot of the standards are high in Maryland. The living programs in Maryland, that's almost like every county in Maryland that has a living program. You know what I mean? Awesome, man. So like I honestly never really even knew that was a thing until I started traveling and teaching, talking to people, and people are like, what do you mean your standards are low because you're a small town in USA? That doesn't mean anything. Yeah. You know what I mean? We still got a job to do. It don't matter where you're from. It don't matter what town you're in, what city you're in. We got a job to do. The job is the same across the country. It's the work you put in. You know what I mean? Behind it.
No, 100%, man. And you guys are very fortunate. Obviously you have the National Fire Academy there. You have just so much history, so much tradition, really some hard charging guys in that whole area. It seems like you guys are really blessed with some folks that really get after it.
Sure.
But man, the thing is like, that's one of the things that, talking to you, man, I can tell you're passionate about the job. You're into the job. And it's one of those things that just, when you run across like-minded people that feel the same way, man, it builds that battery cell up, man. It helps recharge that battery and get everything pumped back up. And, you've been down in Florida, you've done your program down there a couple times, and at the North Florida Fire Expo, just at MAFC, we were talking about MAFC a little bit ago. You've been all around the country, Firehouse Expo, all these places, from big conferences, small conferences, and you're doing this program north, south, east, west, right? And the thing is, the great thing about it, man, is no matter where you go, there's guys that are hungry. There's guys that are looking for that information, looking to grow and expand. And that's the beautiful thing about the fire service is it really is, it's a big place in the sense of, there's lots of departments, lots of firefighters, but it's also very small and close knit in the sense of, you can go to any state and there's a chance that you and I probably will run into somebody that we, knows us, knows somebody who knows us. That whole, what is that? Only 7 people apart kind of thing, like 7
Yeah.
relations apart. It's
for
so
sure.
true. The fire service is crazy, man. Like I was in Ohio, a few weeks ago, and oh yeah, RJ, I see his stuff on Capital Fire on Facebook, and it's like social media has made it even smaller, man. Like social media has brought the fire service together, where guys,
I think so. People argue that, but I think so.
Yeah, it is, man. I think it's allowed people to share more information than ever before.
Yeah.
It's allowed people to link up and network in ways that we've never been able to do before.
Agreed.
If I was a West Coast firefighter and you're on the East Coast, like unless we met at FDIC, the chances of us meeting previously 20 years ago were a lot smaller, right? A lot less of a chance. But now with more conferences popping up, more training events going on with social media and podcasting and all this stuff, man, like we can be thousands of miles apart and share ideas and share, passion for the job. And then, like I said, I think it's a great thing. I like what you guys are doing with Capital Fireman. You guys have been around for a little while now, right? You guys have been, how many years has Capital Fire been running?
14.
So yeah, you guys started, you started before the big social media craze, like before Instagram
we had to
was a
learn.
thing.
We had to learn social media.
Oh man, I'm still learning, man. I'm still learning, dude. It's so you guys put out a lot of, I've seen some videos, especially the last couple of years. Really been putting out some good content with little training tips and little informational plugs and things like that. So I want to dive in. Yeah, dude. I love it, dude. It's awesome because
everybody loves it, man. You know what it is? I had somebody give me shit about the quick tips the other day. You know what, man? Check it out. We're gonna talk about the quick tips real quick.
Do it.
All right. So we decided that we were gonna start making what we call capital quick tips, and we decided we wanted to cater to the people who get their training, their information, their knowledge from the social media. All right. So just as much as I do, people's attention span is you gotta hit them with the message really quick, right? Or they're scrolling on to the next one, right? So we decided, all right, and there's one of my buddies, he's our photographer, Anthony Johnson. He travels with us with Capital. He said, man, you should make training videos and he's a young guy. He does a lot of stuff on social media. He said, bro, you should make training videos and give them a training tip and get right to the point, make it a minute or less. And I said, bro, I'm not really about all the standing in front of the thing. You know what I mean? But he's like, man, I'm telling you, he said, you guys have so much knowledge that people don't even know. I said, all right, let's try it. Let's see what happens. Let's try it. So we made one and people loved it. And then we made another. And then we just started making these things. And then now what we did was we reached out to everybody who said, hey, if you got something you want us to talk about, send us a message and we'll shoot a video on it. And so we have so much content right now based off of what people had asked us to share with them.
Yeah.
So moving forward, right, we made a quick tip recently of our tool, our Halligan hook. And the quick tip was about welding a chain link to it so that you can marry the fork of your Halligan to your hook, right? Bro, I had a guy message me and he said, hey man, we've been doing this for years. This is not new. And I messaged him back and I said, so have we. We have been doing this for years. It's not new. But here's the thing. Did you share that with anybody?
Right.
I ain't heard from him in since. So, the biggest thing is this, man. There's a lot of stuff that we've been doing in the fire service for many, many years. We haven't shared it with people, right? But then we get mad when somebody doesn't perform to the way we want them, or they don't know something that they should know, or we think they should know, right? But the question you have to ask yourself is, did you share this knowledge with somebody? Right? If we didn't share the knowledge with somebody, at the end of the day, it really stuck with us, right? So that was our whole mission with the Capital Quick Tips, was to share the knowledge. It may be something that you've seen before. It may be something you've done. It may be something we've been doing for 20 years or 100 years, right? But have we shared the knowledge with anybody? And that's our mission with the Capital Quick Tips, is to share the knowledge. I tell people every time I teach a class, there is not anything minus maybe one or two things that I invented. Nothing. The forcible entry has been happening for many, many years. I didn't invent none of these tools. I didn't invent none of these tactics. However, I found a cool way to deliver the message. Yeah. And that's the most important thing, right? And so I appreciate you saying that, man. The quick tips are one of our favorite things to do. We have so much more in store for that. And I want to thank everybody who might even be listening to this podcast, to thank them for actually helping us spread the message by liking it, sharing it, all of that. That helps the message get out. And we got plenty more where that came from, bro.
Yeah, no, dude, it's awesome. And the thing is, man, like you said, it's those little, things that you may even take them for granted, right? A lot of guys like, oh, we already seen that. But for everybody who's seen it, there's 5 or 6 other people who haven't seen it,
100%.
or they're new on the job. And so much of what we do, you think about this, man, like the social media has allowed us to capture those little nuggets from senior guys or guys that have been on the job for a while and keep them alive, because I can tell you right now, man, when I came on the job, guys were bemoaning the fact that so much of the experience and those little things, those little tricks of the trade, if you will, were getting lost on the new generation. Well, guess what? Now we have a way to document it. Now we have a way to keep sharing it and keep recirculating so that it doesn't get forgotten. So people understand the context of where tools came from, where tactics came from, all these little things that we, want to pass on to the next generation. This is how we keep it alive, right? Keep sharing stuff, keep putting the message out there and letting people, get their fingertips on that information and read and study and learn, and grow and talk. And, that's how we get better as a fire service, man. So keep doing what you're doing, man. It's absolutely necessary. Keep sharing the passion, man. It's the cure. It really is. It's the cure, because the more people get their hands on that information and plant those seeds in their mind, and they go back to their firehouse and they start looking at their tools, they start looking at how they do things and start having those conversations at the kitchen table, right? Yeah. That's what's driving those little incremental things, those little conversation starters to keep us sharp, keep us on our toes, keep us moving forward. So
I got a buddy on the job, man. He came to me the other day. We were working at the academy. He said, man, you make one video talking about a chain link welded to your hook. And he said, I had so many guys dropping off hooks at the firehouse. And he's a welder, right? And he said, so now I'm welding all these chain links to hooks, right? And here's the deal, right? Like you mentioned, right? We're spreading the message, right? Now, I haven't heard of one guy on my job who actually saw the video and actually went and got the chain links welded to the
Sure.
hook, but they're doing it, right? So they saw the video. So the message is getting out there, whether we actually have somebody tell us that they saw it or they acknowledged it, right? The message is getting out there and people are heeding our advice or our opinions. And that's the important thing, man. I don't need a pat on the back. Right. I don't need somebody to say that, they got something from me, but they are, right? And they're getting stuff from us. And that's the biggest thing, man, was sharing the knowledge, right? Yeah. I didn't invent welding a chain link to a hook, right? I found a cool way to deliver the message,
Yeah, that's it, brother. That's it. So let's talk a little bit about, you talk about forcible entry. You guys have been doing the down and dirty urban forcible entry program for a while. In my opinion, one of the pristine, like when I think of like great forcible entry programs, you guys deliver a great program. You really do. It's solid from top to bottom. You can tell you guys are passionate about what you're doing. You're knowledgeable, and you guys really have it put together in a way that kind of builds those skill sets. And by the end of the day, they're doing some really difficult things that a lot of forcible entry classes don't. It's one thing to do forcible entry in a bay, right? With no gear on, or maybe helmet and gloves, or just BSing in the bay. It's a whole other thing when you put someone on air in low visibility, smoke, whatever, confined space, and tell them to force the same door. Like all of a sudden, that simple inward swinging door becomes extremely difficult under those circumstances. And I love the fact that you guys kind of build in those layers as you build them up in the program. As you go through the day, you kind of increase the intensity. You add layers to it to make them have to use good fundamentals, good communication, right? You let the tool do the work, right? And that's the beautiful thing about just watching you guys work. A couple times I got to see you guys do your program. It is really everybody I've ever talked to that's taken the program has had really positive things to say. So I want to talk about that a little bit. First of all, let's dive into the program just briefly. How you guys kind of structure it and what your goals and objectives are. Because I know you guys primarily it's conventional forcible entry. You do some solid stuff, right? But let's talk about the program a little bit. What are the kind of the skill stations that you guys try to work on? And what are the mindsets and the skills that you try to get people to develop as the program goes on and take back to their fire departments?
Well, I appreciate you saying that about the program, man. And it's one of many of our fun programs to teach. Everybody that teaches for Capital Fire Training are guys who've been on the job for some time. We have a couple instructors that are fairly new to the fire service, but the reason why they teach with us is because they have something that they can bring to the table, right? So all the guys that teach with Capital Fire Training have been on the job for some time. our program, the Down and Dirty Urban Forcible Entry program, is designed to pretty much say the hell with what that book's telling you. This is the stuff that we have seen in the streets. This is the stuff that we have done in the streets, and this is the ways that we know them to work, right? All of our classes are designed to start with everybody being on a basic level. The very first thing we do after introductions is we lay out all the tools on the ground and we talk about every single tool. We talk about the name of it. We might dive in a little rabbit hole of the history, so on and so forth. But there's some people who may have been taught the wrong names of things, just like I was years ago. I was taught the wrong name of a hook, and that's what I grew up calling it because that's what I was taught. Come to find out later on when I became a tool nerd that I was calling this thing the wrong thing the whole damn time. Right. So what we do is we lay out all the tools. We talk about all the tools with every student, and then we go through them. And I mean, as simple as it may sound, there are so many people who gain so much knowledge from that. And we tell everybody, look, man, there is people who, and before we start the class, we actually ask everybody what's their years of service in the fire service. We can get anywhere from, we had one dude that was his second day in the fire department, and we've gotten anywhere up to 15, 25 years, right? So, and my biggest thing is be patient with the class. Everybody's learning at different rates, right? We can sit here and lay out all these tools and talk about these tools, and there could be a couple people in the group who may know all of that, right? But by the end of the day, I can promise you, Nick, by the end of the day, everybody walks away learning something and will have gotten their ass kicked by our scenarios that we put together. And what we do is we build upon each thing, right? So for the better portion of the morning, we just go over basic skills, conventional forcible entry, how to operate a saw, running different things. But everything is simple. It's our time to teach. It's our time to talk. It's our time to share stories. It's our time to go through skills. There's nothing. That's the time to talk. That's the time to ask questions. That's the time for us to dive deep into the particular subject. When we move everybody around from skill set to skill set to skill set to skill set, right? Then after that, we put together what we call mini scenarios or our power hour, right? And our power hour is we literally run them through scenarios. All of the scenarios that we set up in our forcible entry class are scenarios that guys have had to deal with on the job. So there's nothing that we're just throwing together because it's like what everybody's doing kind of thing. We just put together a new scenario for MAFC. It was the first time we ever did it. Was at MAFC. We did what we call the Fulton Street scenario. One of our guys who works in Baltimore City, there was a video floating around of him forcing the door, and he was getting his ass handed to him forcing the door. I can assure you it wasn't for his tactics. The guy is very well versed in forcible entry. What the video didn't show was on the back side of the door, all of the things that were behind that door that made that door not come open, to include a shopping cart. Right. So a shopping cart, furniture, toys, all, and you name it, was on the backside of this store in Baltimore City. So what we did in MAFC, and the first time we've ever done it, we duplicated that scenario at MAFC. What we did was we built a hallway off the forcible entry prop, and we filled it with those things to include a shopping cart. So all of these things were now behind that door, and the students had to force that door and be able to get the door open. The tactics can be good, but if you can't actually push the door open to get it open, to get inside, to begin your search, to get inside, to get the line moving, right? We're still struggling at entry tactics, right? Entry tactics encompass everybody, right? Whether it's the forcible entry team, whether it's the truck team, or whether it's the engine team, the entry tactics encompass everybody. No firefighting tactics get done if you cannot get through the door, right? So that's the Fulton Street scenario is one of our new ones that we just put together, and that was based off of another experience that a guy had from Capitol. So everything that we do is based on, excuse me, everything we do is based on pretty much scenarios that we have encountered in the street. The tight space scenario, that's pretty much downtown Frederick and a lot of older towns and older cities. We do a lot of other things, basements. So we'll build stairs down to the basement door. That's very common for walk-up basements, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's one of our favorite programs to teach, mainly because of the energy level, right? And the energy level starts here, and it goes here, and it goes here, and then it goes here. And if you've ever seen our Power Hour live Facebook or Instagram video we do, we're moving. And even as an instructor, we're moving because we're moving with the students, and it's no teaching during power hour. It's just literally now you get to grind and go through these scenarios and work through the scenario yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, two things, man. First of all, I love the fact that you're not just hypothetically making stuff up for scenarios, just trying to jam people up and make it super hard. Like you're doing stuff that's real life driven, stuff that's actually happened, doors and scenarios that guys have had to overcome. And that is so invaluable when you have context behind why we're doing this drill, why we're doing this, right? Because if there's a lot of I think of like a lot of drills that we do in the fire service, right? Like the Denver drill. Where did that come from? A lot of new firefighters don't know the context of why we're teaching them this drill, right? The Nance drill. I mean, there's the Pittsburgh drill. I mean, there's so many different drills that are named from various fires that had bad outcomes or that happened where guys had to get kind of outside their box, so to speak, and think how are we going to fix this issue, right? And unfortunately, a lot of those scenarios are driven on bad outcomes and things like that. And so, like, to me, I love the fact that you guys take stuff that's actually really happened and put context with it. Like, hey, this is why we're doing this drill because our brothers in Baltimore had to overcome this, or wherever the fire was, or this is a typical scenario that we're running into, and where we're at, or these are some things we're seeing on the job across the country as we travel. And so you're adding stuff in that is not only, it's realistic, which drives home the training even more because guys are like, hey, I could run across this. I could run into the situation. And by putting them through that in training, when they do encounter something like that in real life, they've already got that Rolodex, right? That picture in their mind of like, man, I've been in a similar situation to this during training. Because we get kind of lulled to sleep, I think, with forcible entry. Guys will come out, inward swinging, outward swinging, basic forcible, entry in a bay, like I said. And sometimes we think, oh, I can do that. It's no big deal. But like I said, when you add variables, when you add multiple locks, when you start adding, limited space to swing your tool, things like that, it escalates. It does. It makes simple tasks, even though they're simple, that doesn't make them easy. And I think that's the beauty of kind of what you guys do is you kind of escalate to that power hour where guys are getting that increasing level of realism and they having to overcome those variables. So on the other thing you said that I thought was really good is people just, taking the time to explain the tools and how they work and things like that. There's a lot of people on the job still today. I had this conversation with the guys just the other day about the difference between a pinned hooligan and an actual like solid forged Halligan bar. And then, that's not even the conversation about like, the differences in certain Halligans and manufacturers and, width of the ads and all that stuff. This is just a basic, they just thought a Halligan's a Halligan's a Halligan. And then when we start breaking it down, like, hey, you see these pins right here? You see how the ads is straight instead of beveled, all that kind of stuff. You start breaking down all those little intricacies. They had no idea. And that's the, running across the country. I'm sure you have this conversation even more than I do, but how many people are still really don't truly know how to maximize their tools, don't know the difference between a 3-piece and a single piece forged, Halligan, or don't know the difference between a pike pull and a New York hook, or, there's so many different tools out there that we use. And for some guys that have those tools that are blessed with high quality tools, we take for granted that everybody knows the difference. But the truth is that's not the case in a lot of the fire service. Guys are just whatever's on their truck is what they use. And that could be, 3-piece hooligan bars. It could be I've seen an old school, what is it? The R tool, the big one. Someone was telling me they had one on their truck still. I was like, I've never seen one like actually on a truck. I've always seen them in museums and stuff, but just stuff like that. And guys are using hooks that, hook's a hook. Well, then you put like a New York hook and they've been using like a hollow fiberglass pike pull. And then like you have a New York hook, like, holy shit, like I could actually pull some serious sailings with this. I can do some stuff that I couldn't do with that pike pull. And so I think like the history and understanding like the limitations of your tools is a big thing. And I like that you guys bring that up. When you travel, do you get a lot of that where guys just really honestly didn't know that the difference between those tools? Or are you running into a lot of educating on backstory and why certain tools work better than others in certain circumstances? I mean, what is, you guys are doing this program all over the place and you're talking to people from all over the country. What are the feedback that you guys are getting and the comments you're getting? Do you guys feel like there's some light bulb moments that come on when they're like, holy shit, there's like big difference between these two tools? But I hope,
for sure. I mean, that was me. I was the light bulb moment. You know what I mean? Like I said, man, I was always told this particular hook was called XYZ. That's what I called. That's what they told me. This guy's been on the department for a long time. So I mean, that's what I was told. That's what it's called. That's what we call it. You know, until you learn the history and start diving into things. Now, I also have learned over the years of doing this, traveling to different places. There are also like I don't want to say cultural shifts, but like almost like area shifts, right? This particular region calls this particular tool a certain thing, right? And I'm gonna pick on my friends from Georgia for a little bit. But when we were at the North Florida Fire Expo, we argued about a Georgia hook, right?
Yeah.
And now it's a running joke, right? Because I had half the class who were from Georgia telling me that this was a Georgia hook, and I had the other half that was from Georgia were telling me that's not a Georgia hook, right? And so we weren't even on the same page as ourselves. And yeah. I'm not from Georgia.
Right.
You can tell me that's a Georgia hook, and I'm gonna believe it because I'm not from Georgia. I have no idea what you're telling me, right? Yeah. But and then you know what, man? That honestly sparked my interest to find out what a Georgia hook was, and I actually learned about a Georgia hook. And so there's a lot of different things that become area driven, like particular areas call, you know, this particular style tool, this particular style thing. All right, here's another one for you, right? So like in like that kind of Missouri-ish area, and they kind of shift over to the Midwest a little bit. They don't call a pike of a Halligan a pike. They call it a horn, right? Which is wild. So I've never heard it called a horn. Yeah. But you go into those areas and everybody calls it a horn all the way down and all the way across, right? There's only been one time I've ever shut somebody down and was like, absolutely not. All right. And I hope he's listening. He's a really cool dude. I don't remember his name, but he was funny, man. So he was in one of our classes a couple years ago at MAFC, and he was actually, I felt bad. This dude was set up. This guy told me that the pike of a Halligan was called a saber tooth. And I said, hey man, I'm not gonna let you leave here calling it that. That's a hard no.
That's where I draw the line.
That's a hard no, bro. I think you got set up. And I said, listen, man, there's not one publication that I could find anywhere from here to Halifax that calls it a saber tooth. And honestly, you know, like, but there are some publications, right? You can get online, you can look and then research stuff where I can find horn. It's a terminology that's used for the pike and that Missouri, Iowa, Midwest, kind of moving across the country kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, and honestly, one of my biggest reasons for talking about the tools when we do it is for the guys and girls who are senior leaders in their departments who have to teach, right? If I am teaching you forcible entry and I say, hey, I want you to flip that Halligan around and I want you to put the adze of the Halligan right here, you have to know what I'm talking about. And we have to be speaking the same language, right?
Yeah.
So that's the most important part. If I say, hey, put the pike of the Halligan here, and you're not familiar with what the pike is, and then we're not speaking the same language, we're going to sit here and spin wheels for a while until I have to take the tool from your hand and then put it in the way I want it, right?
Yeah.
So it's very important that we have the same language, we're speaking the same language, and most importantly, that we stop to make sure that we're all on the same page, because when you're teaching other people, when you leave the class, you're going to go back to your department, hopefully, and you're going to teach this to other people. So you want to make sure that you're teaching them right and teaching them the right things and speaking the same language. Does that make sense? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Semantics matter, man. I mean, like, you know, regardless, your whole department and people operating around you need to be on the same page. And that's how we get in trouble, right? Is if we're calling things differently, then we're in trouble. Like, for example, you get a house with a walkout basement. You get some people will say that's the first floor because it's a walk, you know, you can walk in and out. There's a door there. That's the first floor. Other places, they call that a subdivision. That's below, you know, part of it's below grade. So it's a subdivision, right? And if you tell someone you're on the first floor, in some departments, they're going to say that you're on the actual living space up here, right? Other departments can be like, no, it's down here. This is the first floor because that's where the walkout is. And
we deal with this in my department. We had we never, up until we had it implemented in our policy, which was February 1st of this year, we never had a real definition or clear definition of the difference between vacant and abandoned, right? So, you know, it's to everybody, it means something different, right? And some people look at vacants as abandoned and abandoned as vacants, and not ever really understanding the difference between the two. I'll be honest with you, I learned that last year being a part of the policy committee, working on it, when I actually learned about it myself, where I actually learned, wow, there is a difference. There's one fire that I don't mind fighting, and there's one fire that I do mind fighting, right? So, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you agree with it or not. That's the language, and everybody speaks it, and everybody's on the same page. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%, man. So I do want to kind of dive into your opinion on a few things. So
let's go.
When we're talking forcible entry, I know a lot of guys live and die by the Pro Bar. Great Halligan, and so but there's been some modifications. Like people have come around, and there's a few companies that have started making Halligans with different options, wider ads, narrower ads. There's a few variations, if you will, of the Pro Bar of the Halligan. And I just want to know, like, your thoughts on that. I mean, so I know obviously having 2-inch wide ads, you get, it's 15-to-1 mechanical advantage, right? If you're at the end of the bar, that kind of thing. Widening the ads doesn't give you as much mechanical advantage per se, but you get more surface area, more spread, more gap. Then you got some, folks making, the ads are 1.5 so the 2 inches a little bit narrower. So you get a little bit more mechanical advantage, or maybe they shorten the bar a little bit to still get the same mechanical advantage. There's all these different concepts out there floating around on what's the best bang for your buck. Just, in your opinion, preference, what do you prefer? And is there a certain place for both? Do you feel like there's, times where maybe having that wider ads is better than having the 2-inch ads? Or would you say that you really don't need the 2-inch, you could get away with a 3-inch or like a slightly wider ads? What are the your take on that as far as preference? Because I know a lot of guys that are in the forcible entry world have their tool that they live and die by, man. Like, this is the best tool, this is the best one. But you've got to play with them all, man. You've forced doors with all these different tools. What do you think as far as your personal opinion on it? Is it really that big of a difference? Can you feel the difference on tough doors with those tools?
All right, so let me start off first by making it clear that I'm not going to talk bad about any particular name, Halligan, at all. All right. In our presentation, we actually touch on this particular subject, and the slide is actually called The Great Debate. All right, what's the best Halligan out there? Right. And to your point, right, there's so many different companies that make different features, right? I have squared shoulders, I have widened ads, I have jam lines, I have thin forks, I have all these different things, right? Short bars, longer bars, right? There's so many different variables out here, man. So I got to be honest with you, man. We decided, was it last year or 2 years ago? We decided to put together our own class called All Halligans. And this class was designed for any student of the game to come play with any Halligan that we can get our hands on. And matters of fact, if it had the word Halligan in it, it was allowed in the class. We didn't even use flathead axes for striking tools for the force punchy portion of it because it wasn't a Halligan. So they had to do the entire day, 8 hours worth minus a 2-hour presentation on Halligans. But they had to do 6 hours of forcible entry techniques using Halligans. I'll be honest with you, we even brought the first Halligan, or the first fire service tool, which is the claw tool, even though it doesn't have the word Halligan in it. We brought that to us, the very first tool ever used in the fire service forcible entry. They got to play with that. So nice. I can honestly say, man, every company that makes Halligans has their highs and their lows. All right. But I am probably going to be hated for saying this right now. I'm going to say it anyway because I stand behind it, and I really don't care what anybody says. And I have not had one person call me and argue with me yet. At the end of the day, I don't care what your department buys. You got to be good with it. Yeah. And at the end of the day, man, a lot of the people who are showing up at these conferences, doing the training, who are studying on their own, they're diving down the history of the tools and learning about the tools, learning about the job. I got to be honest with you, bro. They're not the people stroking the checks for the tools on the rigs. So at the end of the day, I tell guys all the time, man, I don't care if you have a 3-piece bar. I don't care if you have a one-piece bar. I don't care if it's a pro bar. I don't care if it's a leatherhead tools. I don't care if it's a Melvin. I don't care who makes it. You got to be good with whatever you have. I don't care, right? I feel, and I tell the guys all the time, I use the same exact example. I feel that forcible entry is an art, right? You got to be able to finesse the tools. You got to be able to maneuver the tools in the tight spaces and to be able to have good, solid tactics. If your tactics are good, right? Learning mechanical advantages, learning leverages, learning how to make things move based off of pushing here and getting a result here, right? If you're that skilled in the art of forcible entry, I should be able to hand you a claw hammer and you can make this happen, right? So at the end of the day, man, I will never shit on anybody's tools, but I would tell people you got to be good with the tools you have. It's just the reality is, man, like a lot of us are not the ones buying them, you know. Now I tell people it's important to learn about the tools and learn about why some of these tools are better than other tools, right? Because there might be a time where you're in a position where a chief might come to you and say, hey, RJ, I got a question, man. We got some extra money in the budget, or it's time to buy some new tools. We're looking at getting some new Halligans. What do you think is the best thing for us to get as a department? That's the time where you can say, hey, chief, you know what? This is what I was thinking, man. So we played with this particular tool at the North Florida Fire Expo or MAFC or whatever. And I got to honestly say, chief, that the door that we were playing on was pretty tough. And we were able to finesse this door and get the door to pop the locks, be able to get the tool in a position much, much easier than I think what we might have on the rig now. You got to be able to sell it, right? And the biggest thing is you got to be able to sell it with a good reason of what you saw and why it didn't work. I'll be honest with you, man. I learned not too long ago why the majority of the companies in the American Fire Service were messing with three-piece Halligans. And have you ever heard the reason why people use them so much?
I am not.
So the reason why people who use three-piece Halligans so much is, as I understand it, there's one particular company who will actually replace it when it breaks. That's it. I've never heard of any other company who will replace a Halligan when it breaks other than one company. So that's the only reason why I can honestly say a lot of people, and whether me or you, whether we agree with it or not, right? From a business standpoint, because the fire service is a business on the opposite end of us, right? Whether we agree with it or not, from a business standpoint, if you're going to buy something for your equipment, your trucks, your rigs, your people, right? You're going to want your stuff kind of warranty. Now, whether we agree with it or not, but from a business standpoint, I can see the aspect of it. Now, when we have the ability to make those decisions, and the chief comes to me and says, hey, man, what do you think? That's the time to say, chief, I think we should probably go with this. Let's probably steer away from this tool because maybe these forks are a little fatter or wider. Maybe the adze doesn't have that curvature. Maybe, you know, this has happened to another company not far from here where they popped a pin on a steel door. On a commercial hour swinging door, you know what I mean? So like when you have a good sell, maybe it could help. I don't know, but yeah, man, I think that there's a tool and a reason why everybody likes a particular tool. In our all Halligans class, we had over 20 Halligans from many different manufacturers where they got to play with every single Halligan that we can get our hands on. They got to play with every single Halligan that we can get our hands on and find out what works best for them, you know? We talk about the fact that there's a lot of companies that we train with that will take their shoulders and square them off for tight space forcible entry. All right, well, that's cool. Well, in Frederick, Maryland, where I work at, we have a lot of tight spaces. We have a lot of basement accesses. We have a lot of first floor doors that, you know, have 2 or 3 walls on either side of them, and you can hardly put 2 grown adults in there without any PP and SCBA, let alone, you know, 2 grown firefighters with PPE and SCBA.
Right.
So, you know, there's companies, and we see this all the time, man. And it's another one of our great debates where they will have squared shoulders for the tactics of being able to slide the axe down the shaft of the tool and hit the shoulders to drive it in a tight spot. Students get to play with it in our class a lot, right? But then you turn around and you look at the Halligan bar, they didn't wrap paracord or tape all the way down the whole tool. Now it makes the tool obsolete. You can't even do that anymore, right? So a lot of these, and these are things that sometimes people just don't think about, right? Because maybe they haven't had the opportunity to actually force a door in a tight space where they actually were able to use that tactic. It's not something we do every day, right? But it is something that we might have to do here or there. And I mean, I've done it a handful of times, not all the time, but I've done it a handful of times on the job. So, it's the little things like that where, you might find a Halligan company that sells a Halligan bar where the shoulder's already squared. And now you don't have to go in your shop and grind on it and do all this extra work to it. And you might have already been able to purchase that just like that, where that another company may not, right? The whole thing of wide nads, we kind of got into that some years ago where guys were welding extra metal to the end of their ads, right? But the main reason was when we went to go get the initial gap, instead of getting the 2 inches, which is your standard gap for ads, they were now getting 3.5, 4 inches worth, right? So, I mean, does it change the mechanical advantage of the tool? Absolutely, it does. However, it might help you get that initial gap and pop the door where you don't have to do all the extra stuff? Absolutely, right? So I got to be honest, man, like everybody has a different thing. Everybody has a reason. They might like what they like. And I get it, man. And it's their world to justify why they feel a particular way about something. But I will never, man. I know that it drives a lot of people insane sometimes when I talk like that, because I just, a lot of us are not the people who control what goes on the rigs. And
Sure.
not to rant, and if I'm ranting, stop me. But
You're good.
as fire service leaders, it drives me nuts when I see leaders throwing tools in the trash, throwing them in the dumpster because it's not cool or it's not a good tool, right? We don't have that power. A lot of the people who are taking these classes, a lot of people who are paying their own way for these classes, don't have the power to purchase what's on the rig. And we don't have the power to throw tools away because this particular department's using it and we're not, right?
Right.
So as leaders, we got to be better with it. We got to, as fire service leaders, say, hey, man, I see that's what you have. So let me show you how to be good with that particular tool. And if you ever find yourself in a position where you can make a change in your department with the purchase of these particular Halligans or tools, here's what you want to go with and the reason why. Not we throwing them in the trash because they're not good bars. You know what I'm saying? And
right.
I'll be honest with you, man. In our all Halligans class, we make people force some of our props with a 3-piece Halligan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because some people will come to our trainings or your trainings or your conference. Some people will come, right? And they will not have the opportunity to play with the tool that they have back home.
Right.
Right. They may have came from a place that had a 3-piece tool. They came to our conference, your conference, or our class or whatever. And now they're playing with all these tools that they don't have, and they go back home and they're still not good with the ones they have. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So, I'm kind of funny. I'm different about it than many other instructors. That's just my view on it and why I feel about that particular thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, ultimately, you have to work with what you got. But I think, in the angle I was trying to hit it from, and you already kind of hit it, was, if you get in a place where you're on a, people are asking for your input or on a committee or trying to improve the equipment or whatever, that's where you got to educate yourself. Put your hands on these tools, play with the different options, because everybody's got, I always feel like there are pieces of equipment sometimes that are better for certain situations than others. But ultimately it comes down to, what can you afford? What do you got on your trucks? All that stuff. Who's stroking the checks and doing that stuff? You have to be good with what you have. And I always tell people, listen, I'm a big smoothbore guy. I like a smoothbore nozzle. That's for me, for interior firefighting, I think, and there's enough science to back up that, the benefits of having reach and penetration and solid concentrated water and all that's all out there. But here's the thing. If what I have on my truck is a automatic fog nozzle, and that's what I'm using, guess what? I have to be good with that tool. I have to be good with that nozzle. I may have a preference on what I like, but it doesn't matter if that's not what's on my truck. Mm-hmm. And I think, I tell people all the time, you just have to understand the limitations of that piece of equipment, the strengths and weaknesses, right? There are things that are good and bad. And so if you are in a department that's maybe, I'd rather have pro bars than this 3-piece hooligan, thing, whatever you got on your truck, that's great. You want pro bars. Well, that's not what's on your rig. You have to know the limitations of that tool. If you have a 3-piece bar, there are certain limitations that, the weak point is obviously the pins, and there are differences in fork widths and things like that, and in the ads, the way it's designed, depending on what you get and where it's coming from. You got to know that. And that's the biggest thing, is like, you got to take your tools to doors or your nozzles to fires and training grounds, and you've got to become proficient with what you have in your hand, because we all have our flavor that we like, of nozzle or Halligan or hook or, you name it, hose. I mean, there's so many variables that go into this stuff, and we should be students of the craft, right? We should understand the differences between these different tools. Guys will argue back and forth on the engine side of things, 7/8 versus 15/16. But most of us aren't in a position to drive that decision on what's being used. Or guys will argue about fixed gallonage versus this or that, automatics. And at the end of the day, you just got to know how those tools operate. Whether it's a nozzle, whether it's a Halligan, whether it's a hook, whatever you're using, there are strengths and limitations to every single piece of equipment you have on your truck. You have to be proficient. And if you get in a position to drive change, make sure it's an educated decision. Make sure that you've done your homework, and you're not just doing it because the neighboring department does it, or because you heard XYZ dude talk about this like 10 years ago at a conference or whatever. Like, actually get out there and put your hands on stuff, and let it be a educated decision, an educated suggestion, if you will, a recommendation to the chief or whoever's actually purchasing, because that's you want to set yourself up for success based on the fires that you're going to. It doesn't matter if, I got all the cool stuff that FDNY has, but I don't have the same buildings, and I don't have the same doors, and I don't have the same staffing, right? If I can't make it work in my system, then it just looks cool in the truck.
No, you're right, man. And honestly, I think it's an honorable thing, right? When you have somebody from your department who might come to you and say, "Hey, Nick, man, what's one of the tools that we need to fix?" Or, "Hey, we're gonna get some new Halligans. What's your thought process on it?" First of all, that's a humbling experience in itself, that somebody would value your opinion. There's many places that I know people, they would never value somebody's opinion that way, right? They just make the decisions for people. Even if I had the right thing in mind, I still would take the time to walk people down it. Hey, let's set up a trial run where we can have these and play with them, and you guys tell me what you think. I mean, I'm no expert, right? I am a guy who does a lot of forcible entry training, but I'm no expert. I can walk out of my house today and be in work tomorrow, and I can be faced with a challenging scenario that I never had thought of, never planned of, and now I got a whole new, thing that I'm dealing with, right? I'm no expert. I'm just a guy who just is very passionate about that one particular subject. But getting people to actually play with it, get their opinion and value their opinion, that's huge, man. And that's how you inflict change in your department or organization, based off of calculated decisions and well thought out synopsis of what is working for you guys and what's not. I tell people all the time, "Hey, man, if you're a department that don't do tight space forcible entry, you don't have that kind of thing, it's not a thing that you guys have, it's not a thing that you guys train on, it's not a thing that you guys will do, then you wrap your Halligan. It's that's not a tactic for you. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay for us to be different from each other. You know what I mean? But it's got to be calculated. It's got to be well thought out.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I always tell, you talk about like the regionalization of what people call stuff, and sometimes that shifts from place to place. Same thing. I mean, you got to, firefighting is very much a regional thing, because buildings in the Northeast are different than buildings in the Southwest. There's similarities, sure, but how things are built in different parts of the country, based on not just parts of the country, but times, generations, like when different buildings went up, right? Different neighborhoods. You go in a neighborhood that's got a lot of crime, then you may see some really interesting contraptions that you may not see in suburbia America, right? That you're not running into. And so those things, you really have to look at your fire company, your department. Where are you running fires? What type of neighborhoods? How old are the houses, the buildings? Are you doing a lot of commercial stuff? If you are, what are you seeing on your buildings? Because for example, when I was in Florida, we had a lot of hurricane glass, a ton of buildings with hurricane glass, windows and doors, all that stuff that just you don't see in other parts of the country. And so that made entry or ventilation in those type of buildings challenge. Some things that we had to overcome that other people didn't have to deal with.
Right.
And so like, I think that's the biggest thing is like, you have to, get outside your bubble sometimes too, and rub shoulders with guys that are, that maybe have been down that road before. Like, hey, what are you guys doing over here to get through these windows or to get through these doors? Or, hey, I had this situation and I know my buddy RJ is in the Forcible entry. Hey man, you ever run into this situation? And I call you up. And that's the beauty of, like we said at the beginning of this, social media and all that stuff that's out there where we can reach out to people in a way that we've never been able to. And just call people up and be like, hey man, I can tell you right now, like there's so many guys. I'm so blessed with so many people, peers and mentors and people that I look up to that I can call right now if I have a question on, saws. I'm going to call my man Julio. Julio's a big saw guy. He's
Julio's
awesome.
A man. Julio's a man. You got a
if
saw question, man. I've called Julio from work. I've called Julio on FaceTime. Hey, yo, Julio, run me through this real quick, man. Look at this. Take a look at this, and he could walk you through it from his house. You know what I mean? Julio's the man. Yep. But it's what you're saying is 100% accurate, man. And I'll be honest with you, man. There's sometimes we'll get our ass handed to us on the door. We had one a couple years ago here in Montgomery County. Got our ass handed to us on the door. Nobody had ever seen these locks before, man. Took pictures of them, sent them up to some buddies in New York and Baltimore and DC. Hey guys, you ever seen this before? Nobody's ever seen it before, right? And so now you start digging in more and more and more, and then hey man, we come to find out we've learned. Everybody's learned. The whole fire service has learned about a lock or a door that we've never seen before, just based off of sharing things. Or it might go the opposite, right? Have you ever seen this before? Oh yeah, absolutely. We have those in this side of town, or we've dealt with this. So this is how we had to deal with it. And so now you learn of a new tactic or technique to be able to deal with that when the time comes, because it's going to come back around again, right?
Oh yeah. That's it, man. You got to share that stuff. So we talk about forcible entry. There's kind of three schools of thought with forcible entry, if you will. And conventional, right? Using irons. I know a lot of guys preach, be really proficient with irons. Like that's the go-to for forcible entry. But a lot of folks out there running saws. We talk about saws, gas-powered hydraulic tools, things like that. The rabbit tool, all these different tools that are out there. And then you got, of course, the passive entry, the thru-the-lock stuff has become real big over the last few years. So I just want to pick your brain for a few minutes. Philosophically, when you go to, do a forcible entry out, let's say you get assigned force on the Charlie side on a commercial building, right? Or whatever. Let's say you get assigned forcible entry. Do you kind of start with conventional and work from there? Or do you, if it's a big job, do you kind of gauge the job and say, hey, maybe we start out with the saws, or maybe it's something that I'm familiar with this complex. We could pull locks faster than we can force this thing conventionally. Like where is your mind, like when you're going through the algorithm of like where I'm going to use these different tactics in these tools, where do you start breaking stuff down? Do you kind of lead? Like, so a lot of guys say they lead with the conventional, that's where they start and they'll go from there. Other guys are I know a lot of guys that want to, the saws, like it's faster or whatever. We can go cut a bunch of shit up. It's a lot of fun.
Bro, you know why I'm smiling. You know why I'm smiling at you? Because I have another answer for you that's probably not going to be the same as everybody else's. All right, so my process. Where do I start? So that was your question, right? Where do I start?
Yeah, where do you start when you're breaking it down? Like when you're pulling up and
we don't even. It don't even start. My start process ain't even on the fire ground. All right. Cool. Our start process starts from in the firehouse and walking the streets. All right. So like, here's the biggest thing, man. We have different thought processes for different riding positions. All right. So like, for example, I was assigned to Rescue 3. I was there for 8 years prior to getting promoted. When you were the driver, when you were the one responsible for wheeling the rig, you had a different role than everybody else who was on the rig, right? Mm-hmm. So like, for example, a commercial, right? For a commercial structure, the driver is responsible to bring a Halligan bar, a hook of his choice, and the metal bladed K12 saw. Those were his tools and they went with him. Now his position was to go directly to the rear of the structure, mainly because on commercials, that's where your most challenging locks were. The Bravo, Charlie, the Delta side, or if you use numbers, the 2, 3, 4 side. So that driver is responsible for going back there. Now, again, everything's based off of the setup, right? So in my particular department, we have 5 engines, 2 trucks, a rescue, and ambulance that go onto a box, right? You have 2 engines that are on the front side,
Mhm.
You have 2 engines that are on the backside, and 1 engine is your RIT. 1 truck covers the front, 1 truck covers the back. All right. So what happens is usually the truck that covers the back sometime it's coming from a little distance before it gets back there. So the company that you have working in the rear is going to oftentimes be right out the gate an engine company.
Okay.
So our engine companies don't have wide range of all different kinds of tools. They have hose and water. That's their job. So our rescue driver, his responsibility is to get back there as fast as he can and to help those crews make access into the structure. Now, the thought process of what's the means of getting in, that's completely situational dependent, and that's based on the driver's expertise. And that's mainly because the driver of that riding position is usually an experienced guy. Our department is kind of changing now, where we now have guys who are in that position who have a couple years on the job, versus when I was working there where we had guys who had 10, 15 years, 20 years on the job. So, it's solely based on the expertise of that person.
Mhm.
Now, what are we going with, right? And in our presentation, we talk about it a lot. What's the fastest means for me to get in, right? So is it faster for me to fire up a saw and zip a line across the door and make a doggy door in this door? Can I be able to conventionally force this door because I don't see any crazy locks on it that's going to give me a hard time? And I'm right? I force the door and there's nothing crazy on it and it pops right open. Or do I need to do the thru-the-lock, right? What kind of call are we running? Is this a call where, we actually have a legit working fire? Is this a service call? Is this the food on the stove? Are we here to assist the police, right? So like all of these things you got, I guess I hate to be like another one of those guys where there's this algorithm where you have to follow this. If not this, then that, then if not that, then this kind of thing. But it's what I know as a backstep guy when I was assigned to Rescue 3, it was always whatever I was feeling in the moment that was going to be able to be the fastest for the operation.
Sure.
And it's not ever the same 2 things, right? It's always based off of, you got to read the building, how it's presenting to you. You can look at some buildings. I'm not going to lie to you, man. I've got my ass handed to me on some buildings that I thought were going to be easy and turned out they were not, right? Things you just didn't pick up on, locks you couldn't see, locks that didn't even give you any indicator that they were there living. So, those are all the different things that play out. And I hope that answers your question, but there's never a perfect answer for where do you start. I think that when you build upon your level of experience based off of training, right, where we know where we're going to work hard every time to be good at this particular skill. And like I said before, man, forcible entry is an art, bro. And once you learn the art of it, we're not forcing doors and being lucky. We're actually performing the art, and it's skill. It's not luck. So when you roll up on something, you can put your eyes on it and say, you know what, man, this is the tactic that I want to go to. I tell guys all the time, man, when you see somebody and their boots touch the ground and they're transitioning from the rig to the door, if you see them flip the Halligan more than 2 times, we call it baton twirling. If you see somebody flip the Halligan more than 2 times, they don't know what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
But if you see somebody stepping off the rig and they're going to the door and they transition to move that tool 1 time in the position, that's somebody who's been practicing this. This is somebody who's been who has their game plan well thought out. Now, does it always go that way for them, right? They put their bar in and pop it right out the gate? Absolutely not. But they had that plan made up for what was presenting for them up front, and that's the way tactic. Now, just like anything we do in the fire service, bro, we got to have a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, right? It's okay to also say, yo, man, I'm spinning wheels here. What do you think? Like, give me an idea, because I've exhausted all my options.
Yeah.
I've been in that situation before too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's it's interesting, and I like that, because like most things in firefighting, it is situational, right? You're going to size up what you got when you get there and pick the best tool, hopefully, for the job. But I know there are departments to say, hey, if it's residential, we're going to lead with the irons, but if it's a commercial job, we're going to lead with the saw. There are people that put that out there like this. This is their philosophy: is they're going gas powered if it's commercial versus conventional if it's residential.
I don't know how any department can put that on anybody,
Right.
man, because you know what I mean? Like, especially when you get there and you're presented with something different. Now, like in my department, and I'm not trying to say like this is how you got to do it, this is the way it is, but in my department, if that one person brings all the tools back there, right? He has the saws, he has the hooks, he has the irons. Like, he brought all those tools back there. Now we're trusting that guy to make an educated assessment on being able to do what he needs to do to get in. Right. And why not empower your people to make those decisions? Right.
Sure.
you know, like, hey, as a boss, now I'm in a completely different role as a boss, right? So now when I say, hey, man, I got this guy who I know is going to be back there working on that door, right?
Mhm.
And I can hear on the other side of the fire ground them wailing on this door, right? I can hear everything, and I can hear the sounds of the tools hitting the tools. I know what's happening, right? And I can say to myself, well, I don't need to go back there. I know that guy is trained. He's practiced this. He's thought of this. We've had many conversations. We've done many walkarounds. Like, I'm pretty sure this guy is all right. It's not a problem until he gets on the radio and says, hey, boss, I'm having a hard time back here. I need help. Right. So let those, I don't know, man. It's not my show, but let those, you got to empower those people to make those their own decisions. And not only that, make the mistakes, right? As long as it's not going to cost anything, right? Make the mistakes. That's how we learn. That's how we get better, you know?
It is, man. And, you know, it's funny, you know, talking about like empowering people, right? How many times, you know, we talk about this on the fire ground where incident commanders sometimes can micromanage, or officers can micromanage. Like, give your people a task and let them, you know, if you're training them right, you got the right tools, let them pick the right tactic to get it done. Same thing with officers. You know, there's nothing more frustrating as a company officer than, you know, chief, like, play by play, I need you to take this ladder to this roof and cut this hole this way. Like, no, just say, hey, I need the roof opened up, and let that company open that roof up how they deem best, right? For that structure, for that fire. And that's the whole thing, is like, you know, I love your approach to that of like, hey, I'm going to give them the tools and the training, and then let them assess the situation and pick the right tactic for that situation.
But
and
it's on us to make sure we teach them that first, right?
Correct.
So we have to make sure, like, and we do that in my department. We do that a lot, man. We go out, we walk the streets, we go over stuff, we stop, we talk, we take pictures. You know, sometimes we'll see things, and we'll take pictures. If it's not in our area, we'll take pictures, send it to the guys whose area it is. Hey, man, I look, man, I'm a force entry nerd, bro. I'm always riding around checking out stuff, and I tell guys all the time, like, I can get you in almost anything in Frederick County, Maryland. Why? Because on my days off, I go ride them and just go check them out. And I even if it's not my area, at some point it will be my area, and I'm gonna probably have to go to it, and it's gonna be, you know, on me to be able to already have thought of the plan for this, right? So, like, I'm not saying everybody got to be nerdy like me, then you just ride around on your days off and go check out doors, but when you're doing that with the guys, right, we're spending the time to go through it, and we're talking about it. We're coming up with the game plan for it. You know, that turns around when you do have the fire, because let's be honest, when the fire happens, the building that you walk through, you're not going to be on the fire when it happens, right? So those guys can show up and be like, you know what, man, I was already ready for this, man. We walked it. We talked about it. I already had the game plan. Or more importantly, I saw this on another door somewhere else across the city. So, you know what I mean? Like, they're good to go, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's, you know, it is one of those things where a little work on the front end pays dividends, like huge dividends on the back end, by simply breaking stuff down and going through stuff. You know, there's a video circulating, I think it was last year, of a fire company showing up in Florida to a strip mall, commercial storefront, working fire, and the boss goes up and basically pulls the cylinder on the Mortise lock, and basically threw the lock in like less than, it was like 20 seconds, man. It's super fast. And so a lot of people, you know, it's gaining momentum. Through the lock stuff's kind of, people are starting to get like, oh shit, that's kind of cool, you know, start like working through that stuff. Is there, you know, the people on both sides of the fence, and this is more or less just for debate, like anything, there's a time and place. There's people, you know, criticize like, oh, you know, why would you do through the lock when it's a working fire? But then other people are like, dude, it took like 17 seconds and they were through the door. So, and the door's still intact, and the only thing that they destroyed was a lock. To me, I've always thought of like through the lock passive entry stuff, like, you know, medical assist and things like that, or, you know, smells and bells, or, hey, we got an alarm going off and no smoke or fire showing, using that technique to get in. So seeing someone use it in a working fire scenario was kind of, I think, different for a lot of people. I just curious, you know, is that something you guys, I mean, do you carry stuff in your pocket for basic through the lock stuff, or is that something you guys carry on your persons when you go to a fire that, hey, we just pull the cylinder out and be in here in 2 seconds or whatever? Or you see guys take the little squares and, you know, manipulate locks or pull, you know, panic bars, things like that. Is that something that you guys will use in a fire situation, or is that pretty much like reserved more for lower acuity calls where we have a little bit more time? And then the other question, I guess, the follow up to that is is there a certain amount of times you'll try that technique before you'll switch to conventional? Or okay, and everybody has that number in their mind. Like, if I don't get through this,
I got a
yep,
3-strike rule, but I'm watching
yeah,
you after 2.
right, gotcha.
So like, here's the deal, man. Like I never saw that video, right? But based off of how you explained it, it sounds like this officer was pretty squared away. He had this thought,
Sure.
well thought out. It was gonna be a tactic when the time came. He knew how to execute, and it sounded like he executed flawlessly, right? But here's the deal, man. You're always gonna have the critics. But here's the thing, and I don't know, right, wrong, or indifferent. One of the biggest things we push is when we're talking about a commercial storefront, we are advocates of not blowing out the glass on commercial storefronts.
Right.
There's a couple reasons why I think people blow out the glass. I think one, the reason why they do it is because they have lost the zone of being able to be in the reality. And what I mean by that is their normal reaction, because they need to get in right now, and it's of the essence, is to just blow the glass because that's the quickest and the fastest thing to do without actually thinking this through. I'm actually working on a project currently where we do the science behind this, where we can actually figure out how much air is introduced into a structure and affects somebody who is sleeping in the back of a structure, because we have that a lot where I work at and a lot of other places around us and in other jurisdictions where people sleep in restaurants or commercial stores, a laundromat, whatever. Now those occupants that are in the rear of the structure, how does the flow path affect them in the rear when we blow out the glass? I think I know the answer, but I don't ever want to say without having the science behind it, right? Sure. So yeah, man, like, it's one of those things where I think that when we can take a few seconds to just get the door open, right, versus blowing out the glass, it's going to pay us dividends in the long run. Here's just a couple reasons why we don't like blowing out the glass. One, when you ever blow out the glass, right, once we blow that glass out, the glass crumbles to many, many pieces right in front of the door. It drops down right in front of the door. Now we have a mound of glass in front of the door. So 2, in order for us to open that door, we now have to rake all that glass to get the door open, or is you're going to fight the glass all the way across the pavement to get that door open. 3, when we bring the first hose line through that door, right, now we run the risk of cutting the hose line, all right, with the glass shards that are still in the door. Or once we bring that hose line and it goes right over the bottom rail or the bottom frame of that door, once we charge the line, we're no longer opening that door past that hose line. And forget about if we're bringing the second hose line in over it as well, right? Here's number 4, right? Now we've taken this big opening, and I promise you, man, most of the times people do not take out the handle of the door, right? So now we've taken this big door, we blew out the glass, and we take this big opening, and we've cut that opening in half because we didn't take the handle out. So now you got to watch people with full PPE and SCBA try to duck under this thing to get into the store, right? So we've made this big opening, now condense it down to half the sizes, so it's now half of that opening. Those are all a tirade of reasons why we don't like blowing out the glass. But if you have somebody like you just said, somebody who can walk up to this thing or run up to this thing and in a few seconds can pull a cylinder, manipulate it, and we're in, why not, right? It changes the whole dynamics of the incident. I tell people all the time, and I hope I'm not ranting, bro, and if I am, stop me, right? But I tell people all the time, when you watch somebody pull a cylinder on a bullshit call, watch how they manipulate the latch, right? If they put their flat key tool in, or their modified shelf knife, or channel locks or whatever, they put them in there and they have that thing turned and maybe 1 or 2 turns, because sometimes you can put it in and it slips and you got to go back in and get it again and you got it. If they have it in less than 2 turns or less, that's somebody who knows what they're doing. If somebody gets in and they start fidgeting and and playing around with it, they usually get it by accident. It's not that they knew what they were doing. They got it by accident because they pushed down hard enough, or they just moved the key tool, left or right, and eventually got it. From what you're saying, man, this guy went up and he knew exactly what the game plan was. He knew exactly what he wanted to do, and he executed the tactic. What are we talking about?
Yeah, and that's why I always, people on both sides, and I know that that's not traditionally thought of as a go-to, like, first act kind of working fire. But in this particular case, it was the A side of this building where, we know most of the security stuff is in the back, right? Most of your storefronts on the A side, there's not that hard to manipulate. Most of those are relatively easy, especially depending on parts of town and things. I mean, not hard to get into, as hard as some people might think. So, to me, like I said, it seemed like he came off the rig already with that mindset. and he'd been training on this. He was ready to go because he had that thing open before the line even was ready, and it was beautiful.
It's not even like he slowed down. He didn't even slow down the operation.
No, it was absolutely beautiful, and so that's like, to me, I was like, damn, like that's
it's just different. It's just different. That's all it is. People just say something because it's just different. That's all.
But the results, and that's what I always say is like, let the results speak for themselves, man. Like if the results are great and repeatable, and you can get consistent results doing that, then more power to them. You know, especially on an engine company where maybe, you know, digging through the compartment to find a saw, or maybe they haven't done a lot of saw work or whatever. You know, hey, if you got a set of irons, or you got, you know, you can pull a cylinder with some channel locks or whatever and manipulate with your tool, dude. To me, it's like whatever you got to do to get in. Like you said, nothing begins. And this is, I'll put this out there. People always think that forcible entry is a truck company skill, and it's not. It's a firefighter skill, because how many departments in the America show up? Skill. It is you pull up.
We teach people in the ambulance how to force the door.
Dude, yeah. I mean, how many times, like, listen, I ride a medic unit, you know, half the time, and guess what? We have forcible entry tools on the ambulance so that we get to a fire first due and we need to do a quick search, or just force the door for the engine, right? We can go pop the door. And so it is a fire service skill. It's not just truck work, even though it gets lumped to that realm a lot. When you look at the vast majority of fire departments in America that are showing up with an engine, that's what they're showing up with. Maybe 2-3 guys on an engine going to work that don't have the luxury of a truck coming right behind them, or a heavy rescue or whatever. Every firefighter in America needs to be proficient at forcible entry, because you can't put the fire out if you can't get inside. You can't pull victims out if you can't get inside, right? Our brothers and sisters can't bail out if there's, you know, they can't get out. Like, it's not just forcible entry. It's also, you know, the ability for, you talk about drivers being proactive and softening the building, things like that. Dude, that's huge. That is huge. We got to, you know, if you go to a neighborhood that there's a lot of window bars, like, you got to get those things off, right? That's just got to get done. It's not just forcible entry. It's getting out of the building too. And that's often forgot about, you know, in some departments. You know, some departments are really good about being proactive with that stuff, and some aren't so much. But, you know, the point is, we need to be able to get in and out of this building, and from different points too. It's not always just one point. Like, we may have to get out on the other side of the building because the conditions change, or we find a victim and we need to come out a window. We're not going to drag them all the way back across the house, right? Things like that. So when you're talking forcible entry, it is every firefighter in America should be proficient, at least with basic forcible entry skills. Even if you're on an engine, a medic unit, whatever you're on, if you wear bunker gear, this is one of those subjects that I think that everybody could benefit from, and you know, really needs to stay up on those skills, because it's just like any skill. If you don't use it, you lose it, right? And
absolutely, perishable skills.
Dude, it's amazing though how many guys, you go talk to people that their department doesn't have a force door, right? Or they, you know, they haven't forced the door in 2, 3, 4 years sometimes, and it's like,
that's become a new thing though, man. And there was a long time where people didn't have doors. You know, in our presentation, we actually do talk about how you can get yourself set up to have a door for cheap to nothing, really, and mainly because you know, the information is out there now. You know, there's a lot of people on social media who are posting DIYs for props, right? How to build something out yourself based off of scrap materials. It's a matter of if you want it or not, right?
Yeah.
But to your earlier point of the tools and the tool selection, I think that the tool selection varies upon the different types of units, right? I think everybody should be familiar with forcible entry and good with forcible entry, but I think the tools would vary for unit, right? When I was riding the backstep of Rescue 3, right, I had a different complement of forcible entry tools than I do now as a float boss, where I'm riding engine companies. Sometimes I have a completely different tool in my hand, right? And so, like, I think that regardless, the priority needs to be, and if you've ever seen any of the articles that I have submitted and had printed in Firehouse magazine, where we talk about forcible entry, I think the entire fire ground hinges off forcible entry. The entire fire ground. If we cannot make entry into the structure, then we can't get the lines in place. We can't get in there to do the search. Like, everything hinges off of that one particular skill. I can't think of anything else on the fire ground where everything hinges off of that, right? And I mean, we can say, all right, what if we threw a ladder to the second floor window? Well, if we go through the window, if we break the window, that's forcible entry. So everything hinges off one particular skill for the entire operation. That's just RJ's thought.
No, 100%, dude. You're right on. I mean, it's the truth. If we can't get in, nothing else is happening. So, there's to me, it's like, it is amazing to me how many guys, I've had people tell me this too, like, in big departments where they take for granted they have a truck company come in or, heavy rescue or whatever. I've had people tell me this, like going around teaching, hey, we don't worry about, I'm on the engine or I'm on the medic unit. I don't worry about forcible entry. That's the truck's job. That's a heavy rescue job. I'm like, dude.
Well, how far are they coming?
Right. And what if they're delayed?
Yeah.
What if they're on another fire? That shit happens even in big cities. Like, you have a big fire going across town and your normal first due truck is over there. Instead, now your next due truck is maybe 5, 6, 8 minutes more. I mean, it just depends on what your jurisdiction looks like and how spread out it is. My thing is like, dude, how can you be a firefighter and not at least have an appreciation and an understanding of basic forcible entry? Because like I said, I mean, no matter what unit you're on, you have to be able to gain entry. Like I said, and here's the thing, I'll tell you this, man. I've had more forces on med calls from an engine or a medic unit than I have even on the fire ground, and that's crazy to me. I'm not even kidding. We do thru-the-lock shit all the time. I just had one the other day. We forced the door on a medical call, and it's just crazy. Like it's just one of those things that we do a lot of. It just seems like for whatever reason, hey, dude, I can think of probably in the last couple of years, at least a dozen times where we've gone thru-the-lock or conventional forcible entry on a medical call or a call where we got a haze in the building and we can't get in or stuff like that. We do that stuff all the time where it's not a working fire. And so, again, like I said, everybody needs to be good at it, right? Everybody should be practicing and training and thinking about how they're going to get in if the truck is delayed or if they do show up first due on the medic unit or if they are on the engine company and their next due company is 3-4 minutes out. Like, you don't have the luxury of like hanging out, like letting it burn and we'll just hang out here till the truck gets here to force the door. Like, you got to get inside, right? So I do want to get your thoughts also on battery.
Bro, you're picking me apart tonight.
Oh, dude, I'm going to get it all out of you. I'm going to get it all, man. So battery tools are becoming a real big thing in the fire service. The big push right now with like battery saws, things like that. Have you got to play with any of those like battery saws for like forcible entry stuff? Do you guys have pretty good success with them? Like, what are your thoughts on the battery saws in the fire service?
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. I think that when you get down to looking at, I'm not the saw guy. Julio's the saw guy, but when we get down to looking at the saws and actually the details of the saws, a lot of people would be surprised that they actually do the same, if not more, than what we've been using the gas-powered saws for many years, if not better, right? The problem that a lot of people run across, and they don't want to say, and I'll say it for them, it's different. It's different, and that's not what they used. It's not how they came into the fire service, and that's one of the other things that we fight in the fire service, not to get too far off track. But because I came in and I had to learn how to pick this saw up over my head and I had to be strong with it, you got to do the same thing, right? So the reality is, man, there's a lot of good companies out here making battery-powered saws. A lot of these saws can do the same, if not more, than a lot of these gas-powered saws. I think what people need to do is figure out what works best for you. One of the things that I do like about the battery-powered saws is the versatility behind it, right? We played with these saws in a training environment where we were able to get a gas-powered saw to actually choke out because of the smoke that was there, and we couldn't get the thing to go. But the battery-powered saw worked just fine, right? So now think about it in these situations where you have red scenarios, right? Where we need to get something in there to cut some structural members apart. We need to lift something up off somebody, move something around, right? Your battery power saw is gonna win every time, right? Sure. So the versatility of it is huge. And then you start getting into the details like the batteries, the run times, and all that. That's more so you need to have Julio on kind of night. But the reality is, man, the saws are good saws, and I don't have anything bad to say about them. The other thing is in my volley house, we got into battery powered saws, and we also got into hydraulic forcible entry tools. And as much as we don't want to talk about it, and it's here, those are good tools that we can use for active shooter mass casualty incidents, where I can take that tool. It's fairly light and it's easy to use by pushing a button, and I can hand it to a cop and say, here, man, use this, push this button, squeeze this trigger. And it works, right? Imagine handing a police officer a gas powered saw that you've had on your rig for over 15 years, and you know how finicky it is, right? So imagine handing him that saw and say, hey, man, go ahead and use this to open up those doors or those window bars or anything like that. This guy's he's gonna spin wheels, right? Imagine handing a cop a saw on a mass casualty shooting or something going down like that, and you say, hey, man, just push this button, squeeze this trigger, right? And now he's been able to cut something, move something, lift something that much quicker. Now they can get into the structure and be more efficient. You know what I'm saying? Yep. So that was our thought process about why we transitioned to a lot of the battery powered stuff. We didn't get rid of the gas powered saws. And in fact, since you brought it up, we do have a capital quick tip on that coming up soon, which will drop. But yeah, man, I mean, it's just different. And a lot of people don't like it because it's different. And that's really what it boils down to. But that would honestly be a great topic for you to share, or have Julio share his thought process on that, because he shared a lot of insight on that with me as well from my department.
Yeah, man. No, I think they're definitely gaining traction. You're seeing more and more departments playing with them, and I know, like, the little bit I've played with them and kind of seen for forcible entry, man, dude, to me, it's a no-brainer. They're lighter, right? They're doing the same stuff. We're able to move quicker, cut window bars, whatever the case may be. I know some guys have, had some feedback on the roof stuff that they didn't have enough ass to power through some of these built-up roofs for long periods of time. I don't know, if we're there on the roof stuff, but for forcible entry, the little bit I've seen, man, and the feedback I've got, it seems like they're here to stay. It seems like there's going to be one of those things that can be around for a long time. And like you pointed out, there's a lot of applications where not just fire stuff like RIT, it's not just forcible entry, but it may be RIT scenarios or active shooters, or you name it, where the simplicity sometimes is a blessing, man. It's just like, it's super simple. We don't have to worry about the saw getting choked out in smoky environments. We don't have to worry about all these other things. Now, I know people argue like, oh, these lithium ion batteries are becoming an issue with fires and all this kind of stuff, and do we really want to take those into a fire environment? I think the jury's still out. There's still a lot of stuff that's being played with on, depending on the saw, whether the battery's stored on the outside or on the inside, all those things. My thing is, like, put them to the test. Get out there, mess with them, put them side by side. Take your gas powered saws and your battery powered saws and put them through the same paces and find out those limitations. Because like I said, there may be a place for both of them where maybe the gas powered saw is better in this scenario, but if I'm doing red or something like that, maybe the battery power saw is better. Or maybe if you have limited staffing, you say, hey, we're going to default, if we're taking bars and things like that, we're going to default to the battery saw. But if we're doing roof stuff, maybe we go to the gas saw. I mean, there's
battery powered. You there?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, so the battery powered hydraulic forcible entry tools, the hydraulic spreaders and the hydraulic cutters, those are finding their way on the fire grounds too. We had one in downtown Frederick here about a month or two ago, and our only option was to cut the fence because of the challenges it was to go through the lock and the locking mechanisms on that. And I got the gate from hell, man. It was just one of those gates on a church property that was just hell. And the best option was to get the battery powered cutters. I can't speak bad about them, man. I really can't. If it works, why not?
Right. Again,
you know what I mean?
let the results drive what we're using, right? So, dude, it's been, honestly, man, like, I've had a blast. I love picking your brain with forcible entry stuff because I know.
Yo, bro, you picked the hell out of my brain tonight.
Yeah, I was bound determined.
I was able to help you something.
Oh, dude, it's been great, man. It's been a lot of fun. We've talked about a lot of stuff from conventional to gas powered hydraulics to thru-the-lock. You name it, man. We've
talked about living in a firehouse.
Oh, dude,
we covered it all, bro.
We've hit all the bases.
We tackled the fire service tonight.
That's it. That's it, man. Hey, you know what, man? Like I said, it's always a good time talking with you, man. Always a good conversation. You got a lot of great stuff. Like I said, I really have appreciated, like I said, all the stuff that you guys are putting out there, all the messages that you're sending out there with, like I said, the quick tips and the articles and all that stuff. Keep doing it because, like I said, I mean, it's making me better as a firefighter. It's making others better, and that's what it's all about, man. Is keeping the information flowing. Right? Like at the beginning of this, keeping that information flowing through podcasting, through articles, through quick tips, Instagram, Facebook. There's all these different platforms to share these messages now. And that's what it's all about. And so for people listening, man, like don't just take this information and hoard it, man. Like pass it on. Take it to your department, take it to your crews, share the information, share the podcast, share the articles, share the quick tips, go out in the app bay, look at your tools, talk about them. Like that's how we get better. Right. And that's the whole point of all this. The last hour and a half is spending time to try to share that passion, share that knowledge, so that hopefully other people, like I said, go back and it lights a fire to go back and actually get intimate with the tools on their truck and get intimate with their buildings in their district, and hopefully they take the stuff and they go back and it inspires them to train and to be better, so that when they do get a fire, they're going to go back and say, hey, I remember I was listening to this podcast episode a few months ago and RJ was talking about this, or hey, I remember that conversation or that quick tip that I watched, and it sticks with them. Like all of a sudden, it's like that flashback, like, oh shit, yeah, I remember what to do here, and that's the whole point. Like if we're not getting better, what's the point of doing a podcast, writing articles, or any of this stuff if we're not sharing, man? Like it's falling on deaf ears, right? So people got to use it.
Like I said earlier, man, if we're not sharing the knowledge, man, then what are we doing? We're just it's stopping with us. And it could be something that's so simple as something we've always been doing. We don't have to say we don't have to take credit for inventing it. We just have to make sure that we share the message and deliver it.
Yeah, 100%, dude. So that being said, are you ready for rapid fire?
Rapid fire. What's rapid fire? What is this?
Six questions. Try to keep your answers to 60 seconds or less. Rapid fire. I'm going to hit you with 6 raw, real questions, varying from personal to professional. And you just give your honest. Like this is not scripted. So
none of this has been scripted.
No, this is like RJ has not seen these questions. So
all right, let's go.
Let's do it, baby. Let's go. All right, here we go. Question number 1. Who has been the most impactful person in your career?
My father. My father is if it wasn't for my father, I wouldn't be in the fire service. My father is a firefighter in Middletown, Connecticut. My dad's been on the job longer than I've been alive. There's been times when my dad has been like, "Hey, man, that's a no-go." Or my dad's like, "Yo, I really like what you're doing." I was telling somebody the other day, might have even seen the post we did on Capitol Fire Training when my dad came to our class in Rhode Island and sat in the front row first. First time I've ever been nervous teacher class. Now I've taught all over the country, never had a problem until my dad came into class and sat in the first seat front row. But my dad has probably been the most influential person as it relates to the fire service and getting into it, staying into it, and staying engaged and involved in it.
Yeah, man, it's awesome to have a dad on the job like that. And being a first generation fireman, I can only imagine what it would be like to have my son follow in the shoes and be a fireman, or my daughter or someone like that. So that is super cool. All right, so here we go. Question number 2: what is the best job on the fire ground?
What is the best job on the fire ground?
Yeah, what is the best task? If you were to get assigned one task. Yep.
So I think forcible entry, man. I would put being on a nozzle as a close second. Mm-hmm. But I think we've already covered it, man. If you can't get in the door, you can't get everybody through the door, then nobody's fighting fire. You know what I mean? So if I don't know, it's my opinion. I think that you got to be good at it. You got to be all eyes on you at that moment. Yeah. And you got to be able to deliver. And if you've ever been on a fire and some things are not going as good as you think they should be going for forcible entry, you get those people up your ass and they're like, come on, man, hurry up. They start rushing, right? And then now the pressure's on because you really got to get this door open. Now you got an audience. You got everybody lined up. People got their helmet cams and the GoPros on, and now you look like, whatever you look like in front of them. I think that's the task. With being on the line as a close second, and I'm not even an engine guy, but I mean, being on the line, who wouldn't want to go put out a fire? You know what I mean? Yeah. That's the rush of taking a line through an obstacle course that you know nothing about, that you've never seen, experienced before, and to go to that fire and put it out.
Yeah, you're preaching
as a close second.
That's my language, baby. You're speaking my love language now.
As a close second, but you can't get to the fire if I don't get you through the door.
Facts. True point. All right. So question number 3. Here we go.
Number 3.
What is your favorite book? It could be fire service or non-fire service, but your favorite book that's had the most impact on you.
That's a tough one, man. And I got to be honest. I just started getting into books. I know it's kind of shameful to say. I just started getting into books not too long ago. As you can see, my library behind me, I just started getting into. I mean, I have a lot of books, and I started getting into books. I would have to say it's a leadership book, man. I would say I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's a book called "It's Your Ship."
Yeah.
But that's probably one of my favorite books that I've read, and it's pretty much a good understanding of how to lead and how to pull the best out of the people amongst your crew.
Yeah.
I think, like I said, I don't have a wide range of books. I just started reading books in the last couple of years, and then started diving into audiobooks myself. You know me very well, man. I have really bad ADD, so my attention span to sit down and read something is kind of hard, right? So, you know what I mean? So, like, I just started getting into audiobooks in the last year and a half, 2 years, which has been, like, I think the perfect solution for somebody like me. But yeah, It's Your Ship, man. I actually read that book cover to cover and a couple times. And in fact, I actually have 2 books of them up on my shelf. Yeah, I would probably say that's probably one of my favorite books.
Yeah, that's a good one, man. It really is. If you have not read that book, at a minimum, get the audiobook, listen to it. There's so much good information in it, and it really comes down just to leading people, right? It has nothing. It's not a fire service book.
It's not.
But it's a people book. It's a book on how to motivate people and bring the best out of people, which is what we should all be striving for, especially, as you gain tenure on the job and senior guys and officers and promote and all that thing up through the ranks. There's a lot of people that learn how to manage it, but leadership is an art, man. Leadership is understanding people and how what makes them tick and how to motivate people. Like there's definitely an art to that. There's definitely a little bit of like savvy that comes with just thinking about how the human mind works, how human physiology and all these other things. There's so many theories on all this stuff out there, but when you get down to it, you just got to care about people. You got to show that you care. You got to, if you want to lead people, you got to lead by example, right? You got to be the guy that's showing them the way, not just telling them the way. And so, yeah, that's a fantastic book, man. I highly recommend it to anybody who has not read it. So, number 4. All right, here we go. This is right down your alley, baby. All right. Oh, what is your personal favorite forcible entry tool?
Come on, man. You know the answer to that.
I want details, baby. I want to know, the tool that RJ is coming off the truck. This is my tool. If I had one tool to pick to force the door, this is what I'm bringing.
I gotta go. My favorite is the Melvin Works Monster Halligan. I've used that tool for well over 10 years. That's been my go-to forcible entry tool. It's been my go-to tool for many things. I've had great success with that tool. I've had 2 failures on the fire ground, and it wasn't the tool. It was my knowledge of the tactic. So I couldn't hype that tool up any more than what it really is. Everything about that tool, when you get it, when you open up the box and take it out the box, there's nothing you need to do to it other than put your name on it. So like that is my go-to tool. When I got promoted, I turned over my 30-inch bar to my man cave here, and I have now a mini Monster Halligan, which we call the Boss's Bar, which is a 24-inch Halligan for more design, designed towards officers. So
nice.
The Melvin Works Monster Halligan, and I would be remiss if I didn't say that Fred Melvin, who makes the Halligan tool, designed it, and all of the characteristics of that tool, is a genius when it comes to the tool industry, as he doesn't just make Halligans, he makes hooks, But for me, and Fred knows this, and we've been friends for many years. But the Monster Halligan is my go-to tool.
Hell yeah, man. So there's a picture floating around social media of Bill Gustin with a hose bundle, sleeping with a hose bundle in bed at a hotel, possibly in Florida. It's floated around a little bit. I just got to know, like, when you opened your Monster Halligan tool and brought it out of the box, was that you with your tool? Is there any pictures of RJ with a Halligan bar sleeping at night?
I'll send it to you when we get off this. But you know what, man? I wanted for the longest, and I don't know how to do it. Maybe somebody who listen might be able to help me. I want a violin case. I want the love, peace, all that stuff on the case. And when I open it up, I want a foam insert that is cut specifically for my Halligan. Whoever's listening, make that happen.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie. That would be pretty outstanding to watch you open that up on a scene.
Oh yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. Like you're about to go to work. That's how you know it's getting serious. Say hello to my say hello to my little friend. RJ just put his game face on.
That's right.
All right, so here we go. Question number 5, man. All right. What's next on the horizon for Capital Fire, man? What are some things you guys are excited about coming down the pipe?
This weekend we'll be in Connecticut at the Ragtop Industries Open House. Next weekend we'll be in Missouri. We got so much stuff going on, man. But you know what, man? Honestly, aside from the training, the biggest thing is the content, man. Keep pushing content that helps the fire service. I don't care where we're going. I don't care about the training conferences or anything like that. I care about the content, pushing information out to the masses. Listen, man, not everybody's gonna agree with everything that we say or do. And like I told you, I had the one guy saying we've been doing this for years. That's cool, but have we shared the information with anybody? You know what I mean? So that's the next biggest thing for us, is to continue to push content that's valuable information to the American Fire Service.
Yeah, absolutely, man. All right. Yeah, that's keep pushing it out, man, because like I said, we're better for it. But question number 6, my man. Here we go. Last question. What is the most important message for new firefighters to hear, in your opinion? What is the one thing, if you're talking to a new recruit coming in the door right now, if you had one thing to impart to them, one piece of wisdom, knowledge, experience, what would it be?
You know what, man? I thought I had that figured out. And this past week, when I saw Mueller's message that he delivered at one of the conferences that he was teaching at, man, that topped the charts. And Mueller was a cool dude, man. He took our class in Dalton at the Bearers of the Oath conference, and man, I got to learn a little bit about that guy, and man, did I have a good time hanging with him. But his message, it's not my message, it's his message, and I don't think anybody can top that message. And furthermore, for the fact that he's not able to deliver that message anymore, personally, out of his mouth, but the message will still live on through his words and through that video, man. I think the best thing that we can do is to leave that as the message and not take anything I have to say, because I agree with his message.
Yeah, no, he said it. He said it well, man. And I think, like, you know, hitting on the commitment and what we're signing up for, man. He understood it fully. Have fun. If you're not having fun, you're not doing it right.
And have fun.
That, man, yeah, absolutely. Have passion, love the job. It's okay to be in the job. It's okay to nerd out about firefighting.
His last line said, "Let's go have fun."
Yeah. Yep. That's it, man. Life's short, and you don't know. We can do everything right and still have bad things happen. It happens all the time, not just the fire service and life in general. Sometimes I think we take for granted the blessing it is to do this job, to do the things we get to do. And man, life's too short to get hung up on petty bullshit. I agree. Go enjoy the hell out of this ride, because it is one hell of a ride. Yep. And that's, summed up perfectly, brother. Summed up perfectly. So you survived. Rapid fire. It wasn't that bad. 6 questions. It was not so bad. I know. If you need a hug afterwards, we can we can go apart inside chat bar here. We can talk for a minute, but yeah, dude, it's been fun, man. I've had a lot of fun. I've got a lot of notes here, man. I know it's we kind of hit a lot of different stuff, but I've enjoyed it. I think that the people listening to the podcast hopefully will take some nuggets away. If anything else, man, get fired up about getting, going back to the firehouse, playing with their tools, getting out there and putting the stuff to the test, man, following some of the little quick tips in the videos and the articles, and go back and research that stuff. And hopefully, like I said, if the message gets out to a couple people and they get fired up about it, it's all worth it, right? If one person walks away like wanting to be better because of a podcast or an article or a class or whatever's out there, that's what it's all about. And so the only thing I will say in closing is this, is if you're somebody who's fired up for the job, man, don't ever let anybody take that away from you, right? Like, love the job, be into it, and share it, and share and share and share, because people are watching you. Even if they don't say that they're watching you, like, people are watching you, they're listening to you. And so when you're in your firehouse and you're practicing going through forcible entry or stretching lines or whatever it is you're doing, mark my words, even people that are haters are still watching, and they're better for it when they get to soak in that little bit of light that you're shining in that firehouse. And that's all I got to say, man, is like, we've got to keep doing that. We've got to keep building each other up. And for guys that are into the job, man, find people like mine to sharpen you, right? You get iron sharpens iron. Mm-hmm. And you get better by being around people that are better, that are trying to be better, that are pushing you, and that's what I would say is, for anybody listening, if you get, discouraged because you're not getting enough training, man, there's so many great opportunities with social media, with conferences and all this stuff out there, podcasts, you name it. Like, the information is out there. You just got to go find it. And it's not hard to find anymore. Like I said, with Google, I mean, you could Google stuff and have like 100,000 different responses in seconds. But the thing is, like I said, you got to keep that fire inside of you. You got to keep that passion for the job. And like I said, if you want the information, go seek it out. Find people like RJ that are, if you got something you want to learn, there's somebody out there that can teach you. I promise you. If it's forcible entry, if it's solid work, we named a couple guys in this podcast that are guys that are found a niche, right? Things that they love, and pick those people's brain, man. Like, reach out to them, send them a message, hit up RJ on Capital Fire, go on Facebook, send them a message like, hey man, I got a question about this. Or if you watch a video, like, people are, that's the beautiful thing about the fire service, man. Like, guys will respond, guys will answer those questions. And I think like that's sometimes people like think that, oh, this guy, I could never send him a message because he's a fireman up here. He's with Firehouse Expo and he does this or that. It's like, dude, we're all just firemen. We are all just blue collar firemen sharing passion for the job.
Absolutely.
Man. This is not
everybody from Capital Fire Training is a personable person. Everybody from Capital Fire Training, if you send them a message, except for Tony doesn't have social media. So if you want to talk to Tony, you need to write it on a piece of paper and put it in a carrier pigeon's mouth and beak and send it to Tony.
Or talk very loud.
Yeah, or talk very loud. But other than that, everybody else is very personable. We're all personable people, and if they are not personable people, they're not instructor.
Yeah, no, that's
so. Yeah, man, for sure. You said that.
Dude, thank you for coming on the show, man. Thank you for taking a couple hours here to share your passion and knowledge. Like I said, dude, it's been a great couple hours here. I've enjoyed just talking shop with you, man. Like, just picking your brain a little bit and hearing some of the things that you got going on. And like I said, dude, we're pumped about the episode, pumped about what you guys got going on, and definitely looking forward to crossing paths with you guys in the near future.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on, bro. I really do appreciate you taking the time for me, actually, which was pretty cool. And I do appreciate the people who tuned in to listen to what we have to say or what I have to say. And I think that, you guys have a really, really good podcast here, and you guys are also ones spreading messages through the airwaves. And that's just what we got to do, man. However people want to learn, us as leaders, us as instructors, us as ambassadors of the fire service, we have to navigate that way so we can reach the people how they want to learn. It's on us as leaders and instructors to find the way that people want to learn and deliver the message that way. A podcast, a quick tip on Instagram, a YouTube video, whatever, man. But that's what we're here to do. We're here. They want to learn, we give them the material. Plain and simple.
Beautifully said, man. Couldn't have said it any better. RJ, Dude, it's been real. We'll get this thing edited and out to the masses here in the next couple hours.
Don't edit it. Send it as is. Send it.
Well, I gotta put the music at the beginning. So.
Oh, okay.
Other than that, it's going out raw, baby. It's going out raw. So, but yeah, man, it'll be out in a couple hours. I'll tag you guys, Capital Fire, you personally in the post, and but yeah, man, share away. Hopefully we can do this again soon in the near future, and
Absolutely.
I'm sure our paths will cross in the next couple months. Hopefully with some of the training going on out there, and but dude, keep grinding, man. Keep doing what you're doing. Love you, man.
Love you too, bro. I'll talk to you soon.
See you, dude.
Later.